Welcome, my dear listeners. Stay with me to get the spoilers first and subscribe to the channel. Let's find out what's going to happen on The Young and the Restless. Matt Clark returns with a keycard. Is his amnesia a trap? When Matt Clark returned to Genoa City, the atmosphere seemed to shift. People could see it before they knew it. A chill ran through the town, subtle at first, but more profound with each whisper of his name. Matt was supposed to be gone forever, dead to some, buried in the past for others, a nightmare they had all worked hard to forget. But Genoa City had a way of dragging its darkest ghost back into the light. This time the ghost came with a calm expression, a strange vulnerability, and one very suspicious piece of evidence in his pocket, a keycard. That was what made the whole thing so unsettling. Not a weapon, no menaces, not an explanation, a simple keycard, offered with an awkward combination of confidence and confusion, as if Matt himself was not sure why he had it or what it was for. Almost as soon as the card became the subject of speculation, why should a man like Matt Clark, a man with a long record of lies, manipulation, and cruelty, suddenly show up with something that seemed so normal and yet was so threatening? Who gave it to him? What was he doing back in town really? And most disturbing at all, was his amnesia for real or was this the biggest setup for all? This was the question that haunted everyone. The first indication something was wrong was when Matt turned up when he had no business being. He looked different from the Matt Clark the old people remembered. He was less arrogant in stature, less sharp in face, quieter in speech. He faltered and people stopped in their tracks. He didn't walk like the predator he once was. Instead, he looked almost uncertain as if he was learning the world afresh. He asked questions that made people uncomfortable not because he was a schemer trying to hide his game. They were like the question of a man trying to remember himself. That was the first break in the story. The second was the key card. He pulled it out so casually it took a moment before everyone realized what they were seeing. On the face of it, this seemed a little significance, merely a plastic card with a blurred strip and a coded number on the back. But as soon as Matt touched it, his expression changed. His hand clenched, his brow creased. He looked at the card as if it were at once familiar and impossible. He said he didn't know where it had come from. I just knew I would been crying it for days. He said it seemed important. He said he couldn't say why. And it was Matt Clark, so nobody believed him. Not quite, not a bit. The problem with a man like Matt is that every truth he tells sounds like a lie, and every lie sounds almost believable enough to be true. History followed him into every room. No matter how different he looked, no matter how lost or fragile he seemed, people couldn't forget who he was. They remembered the shrimps, the traits, the manipulation, the cruelty with which he had acted without any hesitation. They remembered the harm. Matt was the kind of man who didn't often change, they just changed their tactics. So when he said he could not remember large chunks of the past, that he had no clear recollection of how he would come by the keycard and no idea why anyone would be after him, suspicion or immediate. Some thought he was coming back, some thought he would come back with a new master plan, amnesia being nothing but a cover. Some wondered if he had actually experienced some sort of traumatic break, but all those capable of entertaining the possibility of his confusion could not ignore the danger hanging over the entire situation. Because if Matt Clark had really forgotten who he was, then something had happened to him. and if he had forgotten nothing, then everybody around him was already in deep trouble. But the keycard changed everything because it implied access. No one knew at first what it was access to, but in Genoa City, secrets were never small. A keycard to a hotel room, to a storage unit, to an underground office, to a restricted file cabinet, to a private suite, to a lab, to a safe room. In the wrong hands, it could open up scandal, blackmail, or something much worse. The fact that Matt had been walking around with it set off every alarm in town, and then the dots started to connect. Lately, there had been strange happenings, uncountable visits, peculiar business transaction, secret meetings, and a feeling that something big was stirring beneath the surface. But maybe the keycard was the missing piece, or it could have been bait. One more Matt talked, the more disturbing his presence became. He could tell of a feeling, not of an incident. He could remember flashes, not the context. He knew some names instinctively, but not why they mattered. Sometimes he would sound really lost, and sometimes he would say something so pointed, so carefully chosen that everyone listening would freeze. That discrepancy only added to the doubts. Was he testing people or was he confused? Was the confusion real or did he pretend to be confused to get the town to let its guard down? The man was not trusted enough to be decided on easily. Meanwhile, the keycard itself was the focus of the quiet obsession. Everyone wanted to know where it had gone, who could get into the site, why would he have taken it, or why would Matt have been given it? Theories spread quickly, each more dire than the last. Some thought it was proof hidden by someone powerful. Some thought it was tied to a secret meeting of people who had been operating in the shadows. Some thought it was a door that led to something to do with an old crime, something long buried, now ready to come to the surface again. But the scariest theory was also the easiest. Matt had been framed with the keycard on purpose. If that were so, then someone wanted him to be seen carrying it, someone wanted the town to think he was in it, and if Matt's amnesia was real, then he was a pawn in a game he didn't know he was playing. That was another reason for everyone to be scared, because if Matt was a pawn, then someone bigger was pulling his string. Someone who knew how to play him, a man who could turn his own name against him, someone who knew just how to turn a monster into a distraction, and if that person was still operating in the shadows, then Genoa City hadn't seen the worst of it yet. In the midst of the confusion, old wounds began to reopen. Suddenly, people who had spent years trying to forget Matt's past were forced to look at him again. Memories flooded back, ancient betrayals, and old fear, old fury. His return was intimate to some. To some, it was a strategy. They watched him closely for the least mistake. One wrong word, one shrimp. They knew one sign he was playing them all, and they would know exactly who he was. But Matt was uncomfortably inconsistent. There were times when he looked scared, almost childlike in his doubt. Did I hurt anybody? He asked. What sort of man had he been? He wondered. He wondered if he asked for the truth, would anyone tell him? Those were the worst moments of all, because if the amnesia was a fake, then he had become a great actor, and if it was real, then the man standing before them was not the man they remembered at all. That uncertainty left everyone vulnerable. Finally, someone figured out the code or the pattern of access that the keycard was linked to. The thought came with a siren's warning. It was no accident. It suggested a place of importance, a place associated with something hidden, something that could not be found by accident. Once the room or location was known, the tension exploded. People scrambled to learn what was there, what had been concealed, and why Matt was carrying the access token in the first place. They proved not only evidence, it was a time bomb. The contents of the place indicated that someone had been planning something bigger for a long time. Files, photos, records, and objects pieced together a chain of events that suddenly made Matt's return seem like a coincidence and more like a carefully timed move. Whether he was the architect or merely the unknowing courier no longer felt like a small matter. The keycard connected him to the very heart of the mystery and how everyone had to wonder if he was the danger or the victim. On the question, the town was divided. Some thought Matt had done it on purpose, that is, Amnesia was a brilliant cover, that the keycard was just another way to keep people gazing while he set himself up for the next attack. They cited his record and said that a man like that didn't just turn harmless overnight. He was far too good at lying, too comfortable with cowards, too accustomed to fear from others. But others saw it a different way. They saw a man who looked really worn out, like someone who had gone through something so brutal that his mind had snapped to protect him. They saw confusion where others saw manipulation, fear where they saw calculation, and they wondered if this was the first time anyone had ever seen Matt Clark lose control of the story around him. That divide made the situation all the more volatile. As people debated who Matt really was, Matt himself started reacting to the pressure. In flashes, memory fragments began to emerge. Door, a voice, dark hallway, a metal click, someone giving him something, telling him to hold on to it. He couldn't recall the whole series, but each part brought a fresh web of dread. The memory was not cheering, it was menacing. It meant that whatever had been done to him had not been accidental. Someone had come close enough to change his reality, or at least shake it enough to make him doubt himself. That meant the trap, if there was one, might already have been sprung. Soon Matt would have to start thinking that the keycard was not just evidence of a secret location but a test. Someone may have been curious to see what he would do with it, who he would contact, whether he would reveal it, keep it, or use it. One might have anticipated every move he made. He could have seen any reaction. The deeper he went into the mystery, the more it appropriate that he was being led on from behind the scenes. And that was precisely why the idea of his amnesia was so chilling. If this was true, he had no defense. If it was a fake, he was much more dangerous than anyone had realized. Either way, the town was in the nightmare. Adam, Victor, Chelsea, and all the others who had heard about Matt's return all responded differently, but none of them could afford to ignore him. Old hatreds flared immediately. The old alliances were changing. Suspicion went viral. Nobody wanted Matt anywhere near their family, their business, their secrets, but he appeared to hover around every major conversation, whether he intended to or not. The keycard made him too important to be ignored, too dangerous to be trusted. And then came the moment that changed the temperature of the whole story. Matt, looking more disturbed than anyone had ever seen him look before, confessed to a dreadful sensation of being pursued. That one sentence came down like a warning shot. If he was telling the truth, whoever had masterminded this situation was still nearby. If he was lying, then he was manipulating everybody to protect himself, but either way, the result was the same. No one was safe until the secret of the keycard was discovered, and when the truth started to come out, it was worse than anyone had thought. The card was linked to a backdoor access point to something very sensitive, something that could expose private dealings, secret communications, and perhaps a long-running plot revolving powerful people who had covered their tracks very well. Now Matt's presence by that access point didn't seem so random. He had either been chosen because he could be blamed later, or he had been used because his reputation guaranteed no one would believe him even if he did try to warn them. That was the genius of the sneer. Matt Clark was the ideal suspect. He was notorious enough to get acquitted. If he complained, he was unbalanced enough to be doubted, and now with amnesia added to the mix. He was the perfect cover for someone trying to remain hidden. That was precisely what the Keycard might have been placed in his hand for. But still, the chance was that Matt was more than just involved. He might have been part of the setup from the beginning, knowingly or not. That fear was intensified by one last memory, a flash of himself in a room with someone just out of focus, someone who might have known him better than he had thought. The memory suggested a conversation, an exchange, a promise he could not quite remember, and it was enough to turn every assumption on its head. Matt Clark's amnesia, real or breakdown? Or was it the first step in a complex deception? As the dust began to settle, no one had a clean answer, but one thing was certain: Matt's return was no coincidence. The keycard was no coincidence. The truth about the memory loss was a lot more dangerous than anyone wanted to admit. In Genoa City, a mystery like that never stays buried for long, and as Matt Clark stood in the middle of the storm, half victim, half man hiding something little, one terrifying thought ran through the people closest to the case. If Matt isn't lying, that someone else is running the game, and if Matt's lying, he has already started his next play. But either way, the trap is set. And here's the part that really stays with you, because the story isn't just about a keycard, it's about control and who is really pulling the strings. In my opinion, Matt Clark standing there confused, vulnerable, almost broken is either the greatest performance we have ever seen or the biggest warning Genoa City has ignored. Because, let's be honest, if a man like Matt suddenly forgets who he is, that's not peace. That's a storm waiting to break. And that keycard, it doesn't feel random at all. It feels planted, like someone wanted Kawas to walk right through the front door. So ask yourself this: if Matt is telling the truth, then who is powerful enough to use him like a pawn and stay invisible? And if he is lying, why come back like this? Why act weak unless it's the perfect way to make everyone drop their guard? That's what makes this so dangerous. You cannot win either way. Because trusting him could destroy everything, but doubting him might be exactly what the real mastermind is counting on. And here's my prediction: this is only the beginning. That keycard is going to unlock more than a room. It's going to expose someone no one expects. Someone close, someone trusted, maybe even someone already in the middle of all this. And when that truth comes out, Matt won't be the only one under suspicion. So now I want to hear your take. Do you believe Matt's amnesia is real, or is he playing the smartest game of his life? And bigger question, who do you think is really behind the keycard mystery? Keep watching closely, because the next reveal might not just shock Genoa City. It might completely flip everything you thought you knew.